Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Chinatown Nights. And this is continuing my retrospective of reviewing as much of director William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. So Chinatown Nights is based on the story Tong War. You might actually think the film is called Tong War because the opening title card, I think Tong War is bigger than the title Chinatown Nights. And even on the poster, Tong War is pretty big. Like, it's almost like Chinatown Nights and the subtitle is Tong War. This stars Wallace Beery and Florence Vidor, who is the wife, or at that time, the wife of King Vidor, the director. It's about Florence Vidor, who takes a tour to Chinatown, much in the same way they did in Big Trouble in Little China. She goes with her boyfriend at the time to Chinatown to take this bus tour, and she finds like a murder and she tries to help, and there she meets gangster Chuck Riley, who kind of basically abducts her, but she's kind of down with it, so I don't know if it's really abduction per se. They slowly fall in love, and she gets deeper and deeper into the gangster lifestyle, almost regrettably to him after a while, as Chuck Riley, played by Wallace Beery, is in a brutal gang war with Boston Charlie, played by Warner Oland, over Chinatown, and who will be the ruler of Chinatown, as Chuck Riley is trying to be the gangster in charge of all the Chinatowns. He's going through this big kind of gang war at the same time he's falling in love. This is an early sound film, and it's a very bizarre early sound film because they decided to make this a sound film after it was a third of the way done. This was David O. Selznick, who produced this film's decision, and I don't know why he decided so late in the game to do this and have this be an all dialogue talking film a third of the way into the production, most of the film already having been done. So what they did is they shot it as a silent film, and then they recorded all the dialogue later, and so it wasn't shot with sound. Because of that, you get a more dynamic camera than you would with an early sound film. Early sound films, the camera is very stilted, it's very still, it's not as much fun as it was in the silent era. And Chinatown Nights still has the moving camera of later silent film. It makes this film far more dynamic and gives it a little more of a flair with its cinematography, which was shot by Wellman's cinematographer on Beggars for Life, Henry Garrett. He does a fairly good job. Sometimes I feel like the shots aren't that interesting, they're kind of bland, and other times I think there's a lot to them and there's kind of a majesty to how he composed them. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. If you're into pre-code Wellman, this is basically a pre-code Wellman. It's a little simpler than really most gangster films are. I mean, gangster films are a lot simpler plot-wise than we have today, and they're more interested in character than certainly we are today, so you really get a chance to be introduced to these guys. I think this film does that very well, but because of the way they recorded the dialogue later, I think some of the dialogue is a little too simplistic. It's just so kind of stilted and strange. They did release a silent version, which I don't know if that even still exists, and I think I was watching it, I was thinking, I bet this would be a great silent film. And this still has kind of some of the hallmarks of its silent version. It has title cards at certain points. It doesn't for most of it, but then it picks it up. It's like at the beginning of the film they had it all planned out, and then like towards the end they're like, oh, there's no way to explain this, so I guess we're gonna leave title cards in. And you notice that a lot in early sound films, that they're still using a lot of the storytelling techniques that they were using in silent film just because that's what they were used to. It's just surprising with this film that it just doesn't do it for most of the film, and it does kind of have a bizarre dreamlike quality with the dialogue. It just feels a little off in a way. Most of the characters feel okay. Wallace Beery does a great job. I think he has a really great presence in this. He's good as a gangster because gangsters have to have a presence about them. Wellman understands how to make a gangster film. You really have to have the gangster be the scene stealer, the person when you leave the picture that, you know, you're gonna turn to your date and be like, wasn't that guy really cool? That's who you want to talk about. When you leave The Godfather, you want to talk about Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. When you leave Public Enemy, you want to talk about James Cagney. If you're making a gangster film and the main gangster the film's about isn't memorable, you fucked up real bad. And Wallace Beery is a great gangster. You know, he has the presence about him, he has the intelligence that Chuck Riley really needs as that character. And I like Wallace Beery. I will see anything with Wallace Beery. And he works with Florence Vidor. He would later be in the film The Champ, which her ex-husband King Vidor directed, and it would win Wallace Beery the Oscar for Best Actor. Florence Vidor thought it was kind of laughable and stupid that she was paired with Wallace Beery. She thought it was kind of unbelievable, and that's pretty mean, I think. You know, I thought Wallace Beery did a good job. I don't think it's that unbelievable. I don't know really what makes men attractive that much, so I might be totally off on that, but I don't think, well, he's like that laughable to, like, she really seemed to not like him. This was her last film. She was a silent film star. She was so done with filmmaking that when they finished this film and they were like, well, we need you to come back to record the dialogue that we're going to do later, she refused. And so if you see this film, she isn't actually the voice. Nella Walker is. And even if you didn't know that, you can tell there's something a little off and strange about her voice in this. It doesn't really fit, and I think it hurts her performance quite a bit. Well, Wallace Beery has kind of a strong, confident performance. Her performance doesn't seem to work as well. She really messed up kind of her last screen appearance because she just didn't want to do this kind of stuff anymore. I do kind of like this film. I think it's almost a little too simple. I don't think it's as well made as Beggars of Life, frankly. I think Beggars of Life is probably a better made film. But what's interesting about this film is this is the earliest surviving Wellman gangster film, because Ladies of the Mob was before this with Clara Bow, but that film has not survived. So as far as we can see, this is his first gangster film. I don't know much about Ladies of the Mob, but this is certainly his first gangster film with an actor playing a real gangster, like a scene-stealing gangster that Wallace Beery's playing, that you could later see in his film Public Enemy with James Cagney. It does have a weird, gritty, dreamlike quality to it, but it's such a strange way of making a sound film. I mean, certainly I think it works a lot better than hearing like that badly recorded sound that was going on at the time. You can do more dynamic things with the camera, but the process they made it with, and I think, you know, had they planned it better and said at the beginning of the production, we're going to have this be a sound picture and this is how we're going to record the sound, I think the film probably would have been a lot better conceived. It was an oversight on Selznick's part. You can tell this film was kind of mangled in post-production quite a bit, but it's still a good gangster film. I think it's a little oversimplified because they have to have the dialogue in it, and more of the mystery that you'd have in a silent version of this isn't as prominent as it would be. And some of my favorite scenes in this are the scenes without dialogue, like where Wallace Beery and Florence Vidor are showing each other Shakespeare passages, trying to flirt with each other through Shakespeare passages, and they're not talking, they're just showing each other the passages of Shakespeare. That scene I really liked. I thought that worked better than a lot of the dialogue did. I think it shows Wellman's very good at making films about these outsiders, and Chinatown Nights is kind of an interesting early sound film. I haven't heard of many early sound films being made like this. Really, the only film I've seen that is like this is Rumblefish, and that was for a more artistic reason really than Chinatown Nights. It does kind of have this weird rudimentary way about its dialogue because of that, but I still quite like Chinatown Nights. It might not have the flair and the direction that Beggars of Life had in an interesting pre-code film. I also like the kind of sexual connotations in this. I think makes it a little sexy and a little dirty, and you kind of see her slowly get into that world because she's so upfront about her sexuality, and that's something we wouldn't see just a couple of years when the code would come in. But it still has a kind of a cool, gritty, mystery, dark, dream, strange quality about it that I kind of like for some reason. I don't think it's a must-see, but it's definitely an interesting watch and not one that you're going to regret. It can be a little slow and odd the way it's made, but it's, I think, a pretty rewarding early sound film experience and a pretty decent gangster film as well. So if you have seen Chinatown Nights and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And the next film in my William Wellman retrospective series is going to be Public Enemy. Public Enemy is one of my favorite films. I have reviewed it once for the Rough Cuts, but I would kind of like to at least look at it again. I don't know if I'm going to re-release the Rough Cuts review on this channel or just add some parts onto the Rough Cuts review or just shoot a new review. I haven't quite decided yet, but I do quite love the Public Enemy and I love talking about it. So it's very probable that I will probably shoot a new one, but there will at least be something up in 2 weeks about the Public Enemy, whether it's new or old or whatever, but we'll see. I definitely am going to work on it quite a bit, and I love watching that movie, so it's not a chore at all. I can watch it a lot of times. See you in 2 weeks.